The desert wind carried ghosts through Tom Mackenzie's dreams that August morning in 1881. He woke at 3:47, the same time he'd woken every night for the past 2 years, his hand reaching instinctively for the rifle that leaned against the adobe wall of his one-room ranch house. The nightmare was always the same. Hembrillo Canyon, April 1879. The flash of gunfire. The face of a young Apache warrior falling, his hand still reaching to protect a child, and that silver and turquoise necklace catching the light as it fell into the dust. Tom sat up on his bedroll, sweat cooling on his skin, despite the August heat that never truly left the New Mexico territory even at night. He was 34 years old, but felt ancient. 8 years in the cavalry will do that to a man. 8 years of tracking, fighting, killing people he'd come to respect more than most of the officers who gave the orders. He'd counted once in a moment of whiskey-fueled honesty. 23 Apache warriors. 23 men with families, with children, with reasons to fight. 23 ghosts who visited him every night. He stood and walked to the small window, looking out over the 160 acres he'd claimed under the Homestead Act. Land bought with blood, though not his own. Fort Stanton lay 12 miles north, a reminder of the life he'd left behind when he'd refused the promotion to lieutenant and requested discharge instead. His commanding officer, Colonel Edward Hatch, had looked at him with something between disappointment and understanding. "You're a good scout, Mackenzie," the colonel had said. "Best tracker I've seen, but I can see it in your eyes. You've had enough." Tom hadn't argued. He'd simply turned in his cavalry-issued gear, kept his Winchester Model 1873 and his Colt 45, and ridden south to find a piece of land where he could forget. Except forgetting was impossible when the faces visited every night. He lit a small oil lamp and went through his morning routine with the precision of a former soldier. Check the Winchester. 15 rounds loaded. Count the supplies. 47 tins of beans stacked in neat rows. 12 sacks of cornmeal, 23 pounds of dried beef. The counting calmed him. Numbers were reliable. Numbers didn't lie or die or haunt your dreams. By the time the sun began its slow climb over the Sacramento Mountains, Tom had already fed his 3 horses, Thunder Whiskey and Sally, and his 2 hunting dogs, Ranger and Scout. The animals were his only companions now. He preferred it that way. Animals didn't judge, didn't ask questions about the scar that ran from his right cheek down to his collarbone, courtesy of an Apache arrow in 1877. Didn't care that he'd spent 6 months learning their language from Jose Carrillo, an old mescalero interpreter who'd taken pity on a guilt-ridden soldier. The drought had entered its 9th month. The Bonito River was barely a trickle. Dead cattle dotted the landscape like monuments to futility. Tom had seen 3 coyotes yesterday, their ribs showing desperate enough to approach within 50 yards of his house. In normal times, coyotes gave humans wide berth. But these weren't normal times. Hunger made animals dangerous. Hunger made everyone dangerous. He saddled Thunder, a gray Mustang with a steady temperament, and headed east toward Alamogordo Creek to check his rabbit snares. The morning was already hot, the kind of heat that made the air shimmer like water over the black lava fields of the Malpais. Tom had learned to read the land during his cavalry years. Every rock, every shadow, every bird call told a story to those who knew how to listen. It was near the creek in a small grove of stunted cottonwoods that he found the wounded Mustang, a mare maybe 5 years old with a deep bite wound on her right hind leg. Wolf or coyote, judging by the puncture pattern. The infection had already started, the flesh around the wound hot and swollen. Tom approached slowly, speaking in low tones. The mare's eyes rolled white with fear, but she was too weak to run. He worked quickly, using his hunting knife to clean the wound, wincing at the mare's labored breathing. He'd brought whiskey for emergencies, and this qualified. The alcohol would burn like hellfire, but it might save her leg. He poured it over the wound, and the mare's scream echoed across the empty landscape. Tom wrapped the leg with strips torn from his own shirt. It wasn't pretty, but it would hold. "You're worth saving," he told the mare, tying her to a tree in the shade and leaving his second canteen filled with water. "Unlike some of us." He was turning to mount Thunder when the screaming started. It came from the east, from the direction of Three Rivers Canyon, high-pitched, desperate, the sound of children in mortal terror. Tom's hand moved to his rifle before his mind fully registered what he was hearing. Every instinct honed by 8 years of combat told him to investigate. Every lesson learned in bloody campaigns said that screams like that meant death was close. He kicked Thunder into a gallop. The canyon was a mile away, but Thunder covered it in minutes, hooves pounding across the hard-packed earth. The screaming grew louder, mixed now with snarling. Animals, several of them. Tom rounded a bend in the trail and saw the narrow ravine ahead, walls of red rock rising 40 feet on either side, creating a natural trap. And in that trap, 2 small figures pressed against the stone face. 2 Apache girls no more than 7 and 10 years old. Between them and freedom stood 3 coyotes, gaunt and desperate, their lips pulled back to show yellowed teeth. The older girl stood in front of her sister, holding a broken mesquite branch like a weapon. Blood ran down her left arm from a deep bite, but she hadn't dropped the branch. The younger girl clung to her sister's back, a long scratch visible on her right shoulder. Tom didn't hesitate. He'd hesitated once before, 2 years ago, wondering if he should fire if there was another way. That hesitation had cost lives. He wouldn't make that mistake again. 2 shots. The Winchester's report echoed like thunder off the canyon walls. The lead coyote dropped instantly. The other 2 scattered, vanishing into the brush with the speed of smoke. In the sudden silence that followed, the only sounds were Tom's breathing and the soft sobbing of the younger girl. The older girl didn't lower her branch. She turned to face Tom, and he saw in her dark eyes not gratitude but pure survival instinct. She pulled a small obsidian knife from her belt, holding it between her and this white stranger on horseback, ready to fight, even though she was bleeding and exhausted. Tom dismounted slowly, keeping his movements calm and deliberate. He'd learned enough Apache during his time with Jose Carrillo to manage basic communication, though his accent was terrible. He held up both hands, showing them empty, and spoke the words carefully. "Safe now. I not hurt. I help." The girl's eyes narrowed with suspicion that seemed far too old for someone her age. She said something rapid in Apache that Tom couldn't follow, but the meaning was clear. "Stay back. Don't come closer." Tom offered his canteen again, and this time Aida took it without hesitation. The girl watched him for what felt like an eternity. Tom counted to 47 before she finally moved forward, snatched the canteen, and retreated. She drank first, just a small sip, testing. When nothing happened, she gave it to her sister, who drank greedily until the older girl pulled it away. Smart. The older one was protecting her sister even now, making sure the water wasn't poisoned, rationing it carefully. Tom spoke again, slower this time. "You hurt. Need clean. Need bandage. My house 2 hours riding. Have medicine. Have food. Tomorrow morning I take you home. To your mother. I promise." The older girl translated quickly for her sister in Apache, too fast for Tom to follow. The younger one shook her head violently, fear written across her small face. But the older girl spoke firmly, her voice taking on an authority that seemed impossible for someone so young. Finally, the younger girl nodded reluctantly. "My name is Aida," the older girl said in careful English, surprising him. "This is my sister Kaya. We will come. But if you hurt us, our mother will kill you. She is a warrior. She has killed many white men." "I believe you," Tom said seriously. He meant it. "I give you my word. I will not hurt you. A promise is sacred where I come from." He needed to check Aida's wound. The bleeding had slowed but not stopped. He approached, carefully kneeling to bring himself to her eye level. She tensed but didn't pull away. Tom gently moved her arm to see the bite clearly. 2 deep punctures, maybe 2 inches apart. Coyote for certain. It would need cleaning immediately, or infection would take her as surely as the animals would have. As he cleaned the blood away with water from his canteen, Tom's hand stilled. There on Aida's left shoulder, partially hidden by her buckskin dress, was an old scar, a thin line maybe 3 inches long, the kind of scar left by a bullet that had just grazed the skin. The world seemed to tilt sideways. Hembrillo Canyon, April 1879. The warrior trying to shield a child. Tom's finger on the trigger. The shot that went through the warrior and grazed the child's shoulder. The silver and turquoise necklace falling into the dust. The warrior's body crumpling. The child's scream. Tom's hand began to shake. He pulled back, standing quickly, turning away so the girls wouldn't see his face. It couldn't be. The chances were impossible. Thousands of Apache in the territory, hundreds of children. It couldn't be the same child. But he knew. Deep in his bones, in the place where guilt lived like a second heartbeat, he knew. This was the child from that day. The child whose father he'd killed. The bullet that had taken a warrior's life had also marked his daughter, and now 2 years later Tom Mackenzie was kneeling in the dust, trying to save her. The universe had a cruel sense of irony. He turned back, forcing his face into calm. "We need to go now," he said, "before the sun gets higher, before those coyotes come back with friends." He lifted both girls onto Thunder Ayita in front and Kaya behind Tom, walking alongside to lead the horse. It was slower this way, but it gave the girls time to trust time, to realize he wasn't going to harm them. He talked as they walked, filling the silence with stories in his broken Apache. About his parents from Scotland, his father the blacksmith, his mother who wove cloth, both dead from influenza in 1872 when Tom was 25 and already in the cavalry. About Ranger and Scout, his 2 dogs found as puppies in a trapper's snare and raised by hand. About his 17 chickens, including a rooster he'd named General because the bird was mean as sin and twice as stubborn. By the time they reached his ranch house 3 hours later, Ayita had relaxed slightly. Kaya was half asleep against her sister's back, exhausted from 3 days lost in the desert. Tom helped them down and let the dogs out. Ranger and Scout came bounding over, tails wagging, and despite everything, Kaya laughed when Scout licked her hand. It was the first time Tom had heard a child laugh in 2 years, and something in his chest cracked open. He gave them his bedroom, the only separate room in the small adobe house. He'd sleep in the stable with the horses. He cleaned Ayita's wound with whiskey, and though she gasped at the burn, she didn't cry out. He respected that. 7 stitches with catgut thread needle boiled clean. He wrapped it with laundered linen, showed her how to change the bandage. For Kaya's scratches he used the same whiskey and clean cloth, less serious, but still needing care. Then he fed them. Beans and cornbread and dried beef. Simple food, but they ate like they hadn't seen a meal in days, which they probably hadn't. He gave them goat's milk from Bonnie and Clyde, his 2 milk goats. Watched as color slowly returned to their faces. "You rest tonight," Tom said when they'd finished eating. "Tomorrow at first light we ride. You tell me where your people camp and I take you there. I promise." Ayita studied him with those old eyes. "Why do you help us white men hate Apache? They kill us when they find us." Tom was quiet for a long moment. The faces of those he'd killed haunted his dreams. Warriors who'd died because of orders he'd followed, battles he'd fought. One warrior in particular trying to protect his child. "Not all white men hate Apache," he finally said. "And not all Apache hate white men. We're all just trying to survive. Sometimes that makes us enemies. Sometimes it makes us something else. I'm tired of making enemies." That night, Tom lay on a bedroll in the stable rifle within reach, listening to Thunder's steady breathing and the distant howl of coyotes. He didn't sleep. At 2 in the morning, he heard the soft pad of bare feet on packed earth. Ayita appeared in the stable doorway, unable to sleep. Tom was sitting on a wooden bench, sharpening his hunting knife, an old habit when sleep wouldn't come. She sat down beside him without asking. They sat in silence for 12 minutes. Tom counted. "What is your name?" she finally asked. "Thomas. People call me Tom." "I am Ayita. My sister is Kaya. Our mother is Desba. It means goes to war. She is a warrior. Tom felt ice in his veins. Your mother fights. She killed many bluecoats because they killed my father 2 years ago at our village, Hembrillo Canyon. The knife slipped in Tom's hand, nearly cutting his thumb. He set it down carefully, not trusting himself to hold it steady. Aida continued, her voice soft but steady. My father's name was Nyalnish. It means he works hard. He did not want war. But when the soldiers came, he protected me. A bullet hit him. It hit me too. She touched the scar on her shoulder. I lived. My father did not. Tom couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't breathe. My mother keeps my father's necklace, silver and turquoise stone. She says one day she will find the man who killed him. She will have her revenge. The world narrowed to this moment. This child alive because her father had died. This child sitting beside the man who had pulled the trigger. The weight of that silver and turquoise necklace felt like it was already around Tom's neck, choking him. He didn't tell her, couldn't tell her. What would be the point? What words could possibly matter? Instead, he made a promise to himself there in the darkness of the stable, with the ghosts of 23 warriors watching. He would get these children home safely. He would face whatever justice their mother demanded. It was the least he could do, the very least. I'm sorry, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I'm so sorry for your loss. Aida looked at him, and something in her eyes softened. You are not like the other white men. I can tell. You have sadness in your eyes, like my mother. Maybe, Tom said. Maybe we're all just carrying our own sadness. They sat together until dawn began to paint the eastern sky pink and gold. When Aida finally went back inside to wake her sister, Tom stood and walked to the small rise behind his house. From here he could see the Sacramento Mountains to the northeast, purple in the morning light. Somewhere in those mountains was an Apache camp. Somewhere in that camp was a woman named Desba, who had every right to kill him on sight. Tom checked his Winchester one more time. 15 rounds. He hoped it would be enough. Not to fight, but to defend these children if necessary. Not to kill, but to keep a promise. He went inside and woke the girls gently. Kaya smiled at him sleepily, and Tom felt his heart break a little more. They ate a quick breakfast of cornbread and goat's milk. Tom packed supplies: 3 canteens of water, 2 pounds of dried beef, 6 pieces of cornbread, a small bag of roasted beans, his Winchester and his Colt .45. He left Ranger and Scout at the house. Their barking might attract the wrong kind of attention. "Ready?" he asked. Aida nodded. She helped Kaya onto Thunder, then climbed up herself. Tom mounted behind them, and they set off toward the northeast, toward the mountains, toward whatever judgment awaited him. As they rode away from the small ranch house, Tom didn't look back. He'd learned in the cavalry that looking back was dangerous. It made you hesitate. It made you doubt. And on this journey, with these children's lives depending on him, with the weight of his past pressing down like a physical thing, he couldn't afford doubt. He'd killed their father. Now he would deliver them safely home. And if their mother demanded his life in payment, well, perhaps that was justice. Perhaps that was how the circle closed. 23 ghosts, and one more name to add to the list. His own. The morning sun climbed higher. The desert stretched endless in all directions. And Tom Mackenzie rode toward his reckoning, 2 Apache children trusting him with their lives, neither of them knowing that he was the man who had made them fatherless 2 years ago in Hembrillo Canyon. The journey northeast took them through country Tom knew well from his cavalry days. Too well. Every canyon held memories of patrols. Every dry creek bed had witnessed some skirmish or standoff. The land itself seemed to remember violence, holding it in the red rocks and sparse vegetation like a scar that never quite healed. They rode for nearly an hour in silence before Kaya began to sing. It was a soft melody in Apache, something her mother must have taught her. The sound was strange in the emptiness, almost sacred. Aida joined in after a moment, their voices blending in a way that made Tom's throat tight. He didn't know the words, but he understood the meaning. It was a traveling song, a song for finding your way home. When they finished, Kaya turned to look up at him. "You sing?" she asked in halting English. Tom shook his head. "I'm not much of a singer." "Everyone sings," Kaya insisted with the certainty of a 7-year-old. Aida translated something quickly and Kaya nodded, waiting. Tom realized they weren't going to let it go. So he cleared his throat, feeling foolish, and began to sing the only song he remembered from childhood. A Scottish tune his mother had sung while she worked at her loom. The Sky Boat Song. His voice was rough, unused to singing, and his accent made the Gaelic words sound harsh, but he sang it anyway, all the verses he could remember. When he finished, both girls were quiet. Then Kaya smiled. "That was good," she said simply. "It wasn't good. It was terrible." But the fact that this child, who had every reason to fear him, was smiling, that meant something. Something Tom didn't have words for. The sun climbed toward noon. The temperature reached 98 degrees in the shade, except there was no shade out here on the Carrizozo Flats. This was exposed country, flat and open, the kind of terrain that made cavalry scouts nervous. No cover, nowhere to hide. You could see for miles in every direction, which meant anyone else could see you too. That's when Tom spotted the dust. 4 riders coming from the south, moving fast, too fast for casual travel. Tom's instincts, honed by 8 years of surviving Apache country, screamed warning. He angled Thunder toward a small rise topped with scattered boulders. Not much cover, but better than nothing. Better than being caught in the open. "Aida," he said quietly, "when we stop, you and Kaya get behind the rocks. Stay down. Don't make noise. Understand?" She heard the tension in his voice. "Bad men. Maybe just travelers, but we don't take chances." They reached the rise just as the riders came into clear view. Tom's stomach sank. He recognized the lead rider, Colt Brennan, wanted for robbery and murder in 3 territories. The bounty was $500, which Tom knew because he'd seen the wanted poster in Lincoln just 2 months ago. Brennan rode with 3 men. Jake Morris, called One Eye because he'd lost the left one in a knife fight, Billy Rourke, young and mean, and a Mexican everyone called Pete, though Tom doubted that was his real name. Outlaws. The kind who'd kill you for your boots if they needed them. The kind who saw Apache children as merchandise that could be sold. Tom helped the girls down quickly and positioned them behind a large granite boulder. "Stay here," he said. "No matter what happens, you stay here. Promise me." "But you," Aida started. "Promise me." She nodded reluctantly. Kaya was already crying softly, understanding that danger was close. Tom took his position behind another boulder, Winchester ready, and waited. The riders approached without caution, which meant they'd already seen him. Running would be pointless. Thunder couldn't outrun 4 fresh horses not carrying 3 people. So Tom would have to talk his way out of this. And if talk didn't work well, he had 15 rounds and he knew how to use them. Brennan reined up about 30 yards away. He was a big man, 42 years old, with a face weathered by sun and whiskey. His eyes were the color of dirty ice. He smiled, showing tobacco-stained teeth. "Well now," Brennan called out, "if it ain't Tom Mackenzie. Heard you left the cavalry. Heard you couldn't stomach killing redskins no more." Tom didn't answer. He kept the Winchester pointed at the ground, but ready. "I see you got yourself 2 little Apache girls there." Brennan continued, standing in his stirrups to look toward the rocks where Aida and Kaya hid. "Now what's a man like you doing with merchandise like that?" "They're not merchandise," Tom said, his voice flat. "They're children, and we're just passing through. No trouble here." Brennan laughed. "No trouble, Tom. Those girls are worth $200 if we sell them to the Indian agent at San Carlos. Maybe $150 each if we take them down to Juarez. There's always a market for young ones, pretty ones especially." Tom felt rage flood through him, cold and focused. "Ride away, Brennan, while you still can." "Now, Tom, don't be unreasonable. You hand over the girls, you ride out of here breathing. Everybody wins except the Redskins, and who cares about them?" "Last warning," Tom said. Brennan's smile faded. "Boys," he said to his men, "looks like we got us a problem." What happened next took maybe 3 minutes, but to Tom it felt like hours. Jake Morris went for his gun first. Tom shot him in the left shoulder, spinning him sideways out of his saddle. Not a killing shot, but enough to take him out of the fight. Billy Rourke fired wild, his bullet kicking up dust 3 feet to Tom's left. Tom's return shot was more accurate, catching Billy in the right thigh. The young outlaw screamed and fell. Mexican Pete tried to charge Thunder, thinking he could scatter the horse and grab the girls in the confusion. He didn't count on Thunder being a former cavalry mount trained not to spook under fire. The big gray reared and caught Pete square in the chest with both front hooves. The snap of breaking ribs was audible even over the gunfire. Pete went down hard and didn't get up. That left Brennan. The outlaw had pulled back, using his horse as a shield, his revolver aimed at Tom. They had a standoff. Tom's Winchester against Brennan's Colt. First one to move would probably die. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life, Mackenzie," Brennan snarled. "I'll be back. With the law. With a posse. We'll tell them you kidnapped those girls. You'll hang." "Maybe," Tom said, "but you won't be there to see it. Now get your men and get out of here." Brennan hesitated, weighing his options. Then he holstered his gun and moved to help Jake Morris back into his saddle. Billy Rourke managed to mount his own horse, whimpering. Mexican Pete was still breathing but couldn't stand. Brennan left him there. "This ain't over," Brennan called as he rode away supporting Jake. "Not by a long shot." Tom watched them disappear into the heat shimmer, then lowered his rifle. His hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the adrenaline crash. Dozens of firefights during his cavalry years had never prepared him for this moment. It never got easier. The moment after, when you realized you were still alive, that was always the hardest. "Tom," Aida's small voice came from behind the rocks. He turned. Both girls were peeking out, eyes wide. Tom saw the cut on his own cheek, then felt the warm trickle of blood. Billy's wild shot had been closer than he thought, cutting a line maybe an inch long just below his right eye. Aida came forward without being asked. She tore a strip from her buckskin dress and reached up to press it against the cut. The gesture was so unexpected, so trusting, that Tom had to look away. She'd seen him kill the coyotes, she'd seen him shoot 3 men, and she was bandaging his wound with fabric from her own clothing. "You saved us," she said simply. "Again." "It's what any decent person would do," Tom managed. "No," Aida said. "It is what you do. Most people would have given us to those men, for the money, or because we are Apache and you are white. But you did not." "Why?" Tom didn't have a good answer. At least not one he could tell this 10-year-old girl. How could he explain that he was trying to balance scales that would never balance? That every good deed was a coin dropped into an endless well of guilt? That he hoped somehow, if he did enough right things, the 23 ghosts might stop visiting him at night? "Because you needed help," he said instead. "That's enough reason. They couldn't stay at the rise. Brennan might come back with reinforcements." Tom checked Mexican Pete. The man was unconscious but breathing. Tom left him his canteen and his horse tied nearby. He wouldn't kill a helpless man, even an outlaw who'd tried to kidnap children. That line he wouldn't cross. They rode on, angling more toward the east now, following Aida's directions. The girl had an incredible sense of direction, reading the landscape like Tom read printed words. She pointed to a specific peak in the Sacramento Range. "There," she said. "Behind that mountain. Follow Tularosa Creek, then Three Sisters Canyons. Our camp is hidden in the middle canyon." They reached the creek by mid-afternoon. To call it a creek was generous. The drought had reduced it to a series of small pools connected by damp sand. But it was water, and it was shade from the cottonwoods that somehow survived along its banks. Tom called a halt. They watered Thunder first, then refilled the canteens. Tom was teaching the girls the cavalry rule, take care of your horse before yourself, when Kaya suddenly splashed into one of the deeper pools. She came up laughing, then dove again. Her hand shot into the water and emerged holding a small trout, maybe 6 inches long. "I got one," she shouted in English, then Apache, then back to English. "I got fish." Tom watched in amazement as she caught 2 more, using only her hands. An Apache skill learned from her mother, patient and precise. Tom built a small fire using flint and steel, and they roasted the fish on sticks. The smell was incredible, fresh food after days of dried rations. They ate in companionable silence, and when Kaya burned her tongue on the hot fish and yelped, Tom found himself laughing, actually laughing. It had been so long he'd almost forgotten what it felt like. Aida smiled at him, and something passed between them, an understanding, a tentative trust. After they'd eaten and rested through the hottest part of the afternoon, Aida asked him about his family. Tom told her about his parents. His father, Robert, a blacksmith in Aberdeen who'd immigrated to America dreaming of gold and found only hard work. His mother, Margaret, who'd woven cloth so fine it was sought after by wealthy families in Santa Fe. Both dead from influenza in 1872, within 3 days of each other, leaving Tom alone at 25. "No wife?" Aida asked. "No children?" Tom shook his head. "No, just land and horses and dogs." "You are lonely," Aida said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, very lonely, but sometimes lonely is safer. Nobody gets hurt because of me." Aida considered this. "Do you regret killing people?" The question was so direct, so innocent in its brutality that Tom couldn't dodge it. He looked at this child who'd lost her father to a soldier's bullet, who had no idea she was sitting with that very soldier, and he told her the truth. "Every day," he said, "every night, every minute I'm awake, and most of the minutes I'm asleep. I regret it all." She nodded as if she understood, which maybe she did. Children who grew up in war zones understood things they shouldn't have to understand. As the sun began its descent toward the western horizon, they mounted up again and rode toward the mountains. The land changed as they climbed sage and creosote, giving way to juniper and pinyon pine. The air cooled. Tom could smell moisture from somewhere ahead, a spring perhaps hidden in the rocks. They entered the Three Sisters canyons just as the sun touched the mountaintops. The canyons were aptly named 3 parallel cuts in the earth running north to south, separated by narrow ridges. The walls rose 200 feet red sandstone that glowed like fire in the sunset. Perfect defensive position. A dozen men could hold these canyons against 100. Tom felt eyes on them before he saw anyone. His cavalry training made the skin on the back of his neck prickle. They were being watched. Had been for probably the last mile. Apache scouts no doubt reporting back to the camp. "Aida," he said quietly, "when your people come, you tell them immediately who you are. You tell them I helped you. Understand? Don't let them think I'm attacking." She nodded, sensing his tension. They didn't have to wait long. 7 Apache warriors materialized from the rocks like they'd been part of the stone itself. They surrounded Thunder in seconds, moving with the fluid precision of men who'd trained together for years. Bows drawn, arrows nocked. Tom didn't reach for his rifle. That would be suicide. The leader was a man Tom judged to be in his late 30s, maybe 6 feet tall, broad-shouldered and scarred. A long mark ran down his chest, visible through his open buckskin vest. Bear, Tom guessed, grizzly from the width. The man held a Winchester aimed steady at Tom's chest. "Kuruk," Aida shouted. "Uncle Kuruk, it's us. It's Aida and Kaya." The man's eyes flicked to the girls, then back to Tom. He spoke in rapid Apache, his voice cold as winter stone. Aida answered just as quickly. Tom caught maybe 1 word in 5. "Soli, Coyote, Nakaye, White Man, ND. Help." But Kuruk wasn't convinced. He stepped closer, never lowering his rifle, and spoke in English. His accent was thick but understandable. "I see White Man. I see blood on my nieces. How do I know he did not make this blood? How do I know he does not lie?" "No!" Kaya cried out. "No, Uncle Tom saved us. He killed the coyotes. He gave us water and food. He made my sister's arm better. He is good." Kuruk's eyes narrowed. He looked at Aida's carefully bandaged arm, at the way both girls sat close to Tom rather than trying to get away from him. Doubt crept into his expression. A voice rang out from deeper in the canyon. A woman's voice, sharp with command, and something else. Desperation. "Kuruk, lower your weapon. That is my command." Tom saw her then, emerging from between two boulders. Desba. It had to be. She was tall for an Apache woman, maybe 5'8", and moved like a warrior. Her long black hair was streaked with gray and braided into two thick ropes. A scar ran from her forehead down across her left cheek, the kind of scar left by a cavalry saber. She wore traditional buckskin dress, but with a bandolier of ammunition across her chest. She carried a Winchester Model 1866, older than Tom's, but well maintained. But it was her eyes that stopped Tom's breath. Brown like amber, burning with an intensity that made him feel transparent. She looked at her daughters, and her face, hard as stone a moment before, crumbled into something raw and human. "Aita," she breathed. "Kaya." The girls scrambled down from Thunder and ran. Desba dropped her rifle and fell to her knees, catching both daughters in her arms. For a long moment the three of them stayed like that. Desba's shoulders shaking with sobs she'd probably been holding back for 3 days. The warriors around Tom lowered their weapons, slightly moved by the reunion despite themselves. Tom dismounted but stayed by his horse, giving them distance, giving them privacy. He counted to 147 before Desba finally pulled back, holding both girls by their shoulders, checking them over with a mother's desperate thoroughness. She saw the bandage on Aida's arm and went very still. Aida and Kaya both started talking at once, the story tumbling out in rapid Apache. Lost while gathering herbs, the sandstorm, 3 days without water, the coyotes attacking, the white man who saved them, how he gave them water, cleaned their wounds, fed them, protected them from bad men, brought them home. Desba listened to every word. Then she stood slowly and walked toward Tom. Every warrior's hand went back to their weapons. Tom forced himself to stand still, to not reach for his rifle, to keep his hands visible and empty. She stopped 3 feet away. Up close, Tom could see she was probably 35, maybe 36. Beautiful in a fierce way that had nothing to do with softness. This was a woman who had survived things that would have broken most people. A woman who had earned every scar. "You are Tom Mackenzie," she said. It wasn't a question. Tom nodded, surprised she knew his name. "You were a scout, Fort Stanton, 9th Cavalry." "Yes." "You were at Hembrillo Canyon, April 1879. The world seemed to slow down. Tom's mouth went dry. "Yes." Desba's eyes bored into him. "Did you kill my husband?" The question hung in the air like smoke from a rifle shot. Every warrior tensed. Kuruk raised his rifle again. Tom heard Aida gasp behind her mother. Tom could have lied, could have said he didn't know that it was chaos that many men died that day. But he'd promised himself no more lies, no more running from what he'd done. "There were many men killed that day," he said slowly, choosing his words with care. "But yes, I shot a warrior who was protecting a child. If that was your husband, then yes, I killed him." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. The air in Three Sisters Canyon held death in its stillness. 7 Apache warriors with arrows drawn and rifles raised, all pointed at one man. Tom Mackenzie stood beside his horse, unarmed by choice, waiting for judgment. He'd survived 8 years in the cavalry. He'd tracked through hostile territory and fought in a dozen skirmishes. He'd learned to read the land, to sense danger before it arrived. But nothing in those years had prepared him for this moment, standing before a woman whose husband he'd killed, watching her decide whether he lived or died. Kuruk spoke first, his voice sharp with rage. "Let me kill him, Desba. Let me take his life for Nalnish. Blood for blood. It is justice." The other warriors murmured agreement. Tom saw their fingers tighten on bowstrings, saw the hatred in their eyes. He understood it, welcomed it even. 23 ghosts visited him every night. Perhaps it was time to join them, but Aita moved before anyone else could. She stepped between Tom and the warriors, her small body shaking, but her voice clear. "No, you cannot kill him. He saved us. He could have left us to die. He could have hurt us. He could have sold us to bad men for money, but he did not. He protected us." Kaya rushed to stand beside her sister. "Uncle Kuruk, please. Tom is good. He sang to me when I was scared. He gave us his food. He fought bad men to keep us safe." Desba raised her hand and everyone fell silent. She studied Tom with those amber eyes, and he felt like she was looking straight through him, seeing every sin, every regret, every nightmare. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet but carried absolute authority. "Kuruk, lower your weapon." "But sister," "I said lower it. That is not a request." Kuruk's face twisted with frustration, but he obeyed. The other warriors followed his lead, though their expressions remained hostile. Desba walked closer to Tom, close enough that he could see the silver threads in her hair, the small scars on her hands from years of hard work and harder fighting. "You admit you killed my husband," she said. "Yes." "You do not deny it. You do not make excuses." "No, there are no excuses. I followed orders. I pulled the trigger. The responsibility is mine." Desba's jaw tightened. Naalnish was a good man. He made knives, beautiful knives. He did not want war. But when the soldiers came to our village, when they started shooting, he picked up a rifle to protect our children, to protect Aita. She paused, her voice catching. "He died protecting our daughter, and you took him from us." Tom nodded. "I know. I saw him fall. I've seen it every night for 2 years. If you want my life in payment, I understand. I accept it." He knelt in the dust as he'd seen Apache prisoners do before execution. If this was how it ended, he would face it with what dignity he had left. At least he'd gotten the children home. At least he'd kept that promise. But Desba didn't draw her knife. Instead, she knelt too, bringing herself to his eye level. "You saved my daughters. You could have abandoned them. You could have sold them. You could have done terrible things. Instead, you risked your life to bring them home. Why?" Tom thought about lying, about making it simple. But this woman deserved the truth. "Because I owe too many debts that can never be repaid. Because I've taken too many lives. Because when I saw them in danger, I had a choice. I could be the man who kills children or the man who saves them. I chose to save them. It doesn't balance the scales. Nothing can. But it was the only choice I could live with." Desba studied his face for a long time. Behind her, Tom could hear the camp stirring, more people emerging from wiki-ups, women and children coming to see what the commotion was about, coming to see the white man who'd brought their missing daughters home. Finally, Desba stood. She turned to address her people in Apache, her voice ringing clear. Tom caught maybe half of it. Words like debt and honor and sacred. Words like daughter and life and balance. When she finished, Kuruk looked like he wanted to argue, but several of the older warriors nodded slowly. Desba turned back to Tom. "Stand up." He did. "Among my people," she said, "a life debt is sacred. You saved my children when you could have left them to die. You protected them from evil men. You returned them to me safely. By our law, by our tradition, I owe you a life. The life of Naalnish is gone, but the lives of Aita and Kaya have been returned. The debt must be acknowledged." She walked to her wiki-up and emerged a moment later carrying a small leather pouch. The camp had gone completely silent. Every eye watched as Desba opened the pouch with hands that trembled slightly. She pulled out a necklace, silver and turquoise, the same one Tom had seen in his nightmares for 740 nights. Tom's knees nearly gave out. He'd dreamed of this necklace, the way it had caught the light as Naalnish fell, the way it had landed in the dust beside the warrior's body, and now here it was real and solid, the weight of 2 years of guilt made manifest in silver and stone. "This was my husband's," Desba said, her voice thick with emotion. His father made it. His father's father wore it. It is the most precious thing I have left of him. When you killed him, when you shot him, protecting our daughter, this necklace fell into the blood and dust. Tom wanted to look away, but forced himself to meet her eyes, to bear witness to her pain. I have kept it these 2 years, she continued. I held it every night and swore vengeance. I swore that one day I would find the man who killed my husband, and I would make him suffer as I suffered. But now, her voice broke slightly, now that man stands before me and my daughters say he is good. They say he saved them. They say he risked his life for them. She stepped forward and placed the necklace over Tom's head. The silver was warm from being held close to her body. The turquoise caught the dying sunlight and seemed to glow. Wear this, Desba commanded. Any Apache who sees it will know you are under my protection. They will know you are a friend to the family of Nalnish. They will know that the debt has been acknowledged, even if it can never be fully repaid. Tom's hands shook as he touched the necklace. I can't accept this. This is yours, your husband's. You will accept it, Desba said firmly. To refuse would dishonor me and my daughters. To refuse would say that my gratitude means nothing. You will wear it, and you will remember. Remember that enemies can become something else when mercy is shown. Tom nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. Desba wasn't finished. She gestured for him to follow her away from the crowd toward the edge of the camp where they could speak privately. Aida started to follow, but her mother shook her head. This conversation was not for children's ears. They stood together looking out over the canyon as the sun painted the sky red and gold. For several minutes, neither spoke. Finally, Desba broke the silence. I must tell you something, she said, and you must listen carefully. I am repaying my debt to you, but the payment is not complete. I have given you protection. Now I give you a warning. Tom tensed. What kind of warning? 3 days from now, August 17th, there will be an attack, not from my people, from a group of young warriors who follow Nana. They are angry. They have lost fathers, mothers, brothers, sisters to the soldiers. They want revenge. Where will they attack? The ranches to the south, along the Ruidoso Valley. They will burn every house they find. They will kill every white person they see. Your ranch, she paused, meeting his eyes, your ranch is directly in their path. Ice flooded Tom's veins. Why are you telling me this? Because I pay my debts. You saved my children. I save you. Leave your ranch for 3 days. Go north to Ruidoso town or west to Lincoln. When you return, your house will still be there. The raiders only burn homes with people in them. They only kill those who fight. An empty house is not worth their time. Tom's mind raced. What about other ranchers? Other families? Desba's face hardened. I can only save the man who saved my children. I do not have the power to stop this raid. It is bigger than me. The young warriors are beyond my control. All I can do is warn you. That is the extent of what I can offer. I can't just leave others to die. Then you will die with them. Her voice was flat, matter-of-fact. I am telling you this so you can live. What you do with the information is your choice. But know this, if you try to warn the others, if you try to organize a defense, you will most likely die. My son will not show mercy to a man in uniform, even if that uniform is a rancher's clothes. Tom's head snapped up. Your son! Desba's eyes filled with pain. Yes, my son. Dakota. He is 17 now. He was 15 when his father died. When Nalnish was killed at Hembrillo Canyon, Dakota saw it happen. He held his father as he died. Since that day, my son has been consumed with hatred for all white men. He trains constantly. He plans vengeance constantly. He is one of the leaders of this raid. She took a shaky breath. If Dakota knew I was warning you, if he knew I gave you his father's necklace, he would never forgive me. He might even renounce me as his mother. But I cannot let the man who saved Aida and Kaya die when I have the power to save him. I cannot. even if it costs me my son's love." The weight of what she was telling him settled on Tom's shoulders like physical stone. This woman was risking everything to warn him. Her relationship with her son, her standing in her community, all because of a debt she felt compelled to honor. "There's more you should know," Desba continued. "Dakota has your description, or rather he has a description of the scout who killed his father. He does not know your name, but if he saw you, if he saw that necklace, he would know, and he would kill you without hesitation, debt or no debt." Tom nodded slowly. "I understand, and I thank you for the warning, but I can't just run and save myself while others die." Desba looked at him with something that might have been respect or might have been pity. "You are a fool, a brave fool. My husband was also a brave fool. That is why he is dead." "Maybe," Tom agreed, "but I'd rather be a brave fool than a living coward." Something passed across Desba's face. She reached up and placed her hand over Tom's heart, a gesture that seemed both intimate and sacred. "Then, I give you something more than a warning. I give you my prayers, my hope that you survive, and my promise that if you do, if somehow you live through what is coming, you will always have a friend among the Apache. Always." She turned to walk back to camp, then stopped. "The young warrior who died today, the one shot by your friend Brennan's men, he was Dakota's closest friend. My son's anger will be even greater now. He will want blood, much blood. Remember that when you make your choices." Tom watched her walk away, then looked down at the necklace resting against his chest. The silver was cool now, the turquoise dark in the fading light. 2 years ago he'd taken this from a dying man. Now it had been given back to him, transformed from a trophy of war into a symbol of something else. Redemption, maybe, or judgment. Perhaps they were the same thing. He stayed at the canyon's edge as full dark fell. The Apache camp came alive with cooking fires and quiet conversation. Someone had started singing a different song than Ayita and Kaya's traveling song. This one was slower, sadder. A mourning song, perhaps, for all that had been lost. Ayita found him there an hour later. She carried 2 bowls of something that smelled like roasted meat and herbs. "Mother says you should eat before you leave. She says it is a long ride back to your home." Tom took the bowl gratefully. He hadn't realized how hungry he was. The food was good, better than anything he'd cooked for himself in months. They ate in comfortable silence for a while. "Tom," Ayita said finally, "are you going to leave like Mother told you?" He couldn't lie to this child, not after everything. "I don't know yet. I am thinking about it." "You should leave. Mother is right. The young warriors are very angry. They will kill you." "What about other people? Other families?" Ayita was quiet for a long moment. "Mother can only save you. She wants to save you because you saved us. Is that wrong?" "No," Tom said. "Your mother is doing what she thinks is right, what she has to do. I understand that. But I have to do what I think is right too. Even if it means you die." "Even then?" Ayita looked up at him with those ancient eyes. "You are like my father. He also chose to do the right thing even when it was dangerous. Mother says that is why she loved him." The comparison twisted like a knife in Tom's gut. He was nothing like Nalnish. The man he'd killed had been protecting his child. Tom had been the one threatening that child. But he didn't correct Ayita. Let her have her illusions. Kaya appeared then, running up breathless. Tom, Mother says you can stay tonight. Sleep by our fire. She says you leave in the morning." The invitation was unexpected and deeply generous. To allow an enemy, a man who'd killed her husband, to sleep in her camp spoke volumes about Desba's character and her commitment to honoring the debt. Tom spent that night by the fire, surrounded by people who had every reason to hate him. Kuruk sat across from him, still radiating hostility but remaining silent. Other warriors came and went, their expressions ranging from curiosity to suspicion to outright anger. But none touched him. The necklace around his neck and Desba's word were protection stronger than any rifle. Aita and Kaya sat on either side of Tom, chattering about everything and nothing. Kaya showed him a doll made from corn husks. Aita told him about the herbs they'd been gathering when they got lost. Their normalcy, their childlike innocence in the midst of so much hatred and violence, was both heartbreaking and hopeful. As the fire burned low and families began retiring to their wickiups, Desba approached. She handed Tom a small bundle wrapped in cloth. "Food for your journey," she said. "And this." She pressed something small and hard into his palm, a stone smooth and black, obsidian. "Aita wants you to have it. She says it will protect you. I do not know if such things work, but it cannot hurt." Tom closed his fingers around the stone. "Thank you. For everything. For the warning. For not killing me. For letting me see that not all debts are paid with blood." "You gave me back my daughters," Desba said simply. "Nothing is more precious. Nothing." She started to turn away, then stopped. "Tom Mackenzie. When I told Dakota his father was dead, he asked me what kind of man could kill someone who was protecting a child. I told him I did not know. I told him only a monster could do such a thing. But now I know I was wrong. You are not a monster. You are a man who made a terrible choice in a terrible situation, a man who has lived with the guilt every day since. That does not excuse what you did, but it means you are human, flawed and broken and trying to do better, like all of us." She walked away before Tom could respond, her silhouette disappearing into the darkness. Tom lay awake most of that night, staring up at the stars through the canyon opening. He thought about choices. About the choice he'd made 2 years ago to pull the trigger. About the choice Desba had made today to give him the necklace and the warning. About the choice he would have to make tomorrow when he rode away from this place. He could go north to Ruidoso like Desba suggested, save himself, live. Or he could ride south to the scattered ranches and try to warn them, probably die in the process either in the fighting or hanged by settlers who wouldn't believe a story about Apache raids warned by an Apache mother. 23 ghosts visited his dreams that night. 23 Apache warriors he'd killed over 8 years. But this time, Nile Nish stood at the front of them, and instead of accusing, instead of demanding vengeance, the ghost simply looked at him with sad eyes and asked a question. "What kind of man are you?" Tom woke before dawn to find Aita and Kaya already up preparing his horse. They'd brushed Thunder and filled his saddlebags with food. Kaya had even made a small bracelet from grass and tied it around Tom's wrist. "So you remember us," she said solemnly. "I could never forget you," Tom promised. "Never." Aita handed him something else, a small pouch. "Seeds, from the herbs we were gathering. Mother says to plant them by your house. They will grow strong and remind you that good things can grow even in hard places." Tom hugged both girls, something he wouldn't have imagined doing 3 days ago. He was not a man comfortable with physical affection. But these children had cracked something open in him, let light into places that had been dark for too long. Desba walked with him to the edge of camp. She didn't say goodbye. Instead, she gripped his forearm in the way Apache warriors gripped each other, a gesture of respect between equals. "Go north," she said one last time. "Live. That is how you honor my husband. Not by dying foolishly, but by living and doing good." Tom nodded but made no promises. He mounted Thunder and rode out of Three Sisters Canyon as the sun rose, painting the rock walls gold and crimson. He didn't look back. Looking back was weakness. Looking back made you doubt. When he reached the fork in the trail, he sat for a long moment. North led to safety. South led to his ranch and the scattered homesteads beyond. North meant life. South meant almost certain death. He thought about Aida standing with a broken branch against 3 coyotes refusing to run. He thought about Desba giving him the necklace of the man he'd killed, choosing honor over vengeance. He thought about 23 ghosts and one question: what kind of man are you? Tom Mackenzie turned his horse south. He had warnings to deliver and lives to save, even if saving them cost him his own. He'd been running from his guilt for 2 years. He'd been trying to forget the faces of the men he'd killed, but forgetting was impossible, and running only made the ghosts follow closer. Maybe the only way to find peace was to stop running. Maybe the only way to balance the deaths he'd caused was to save lives equal to those he'd taken, or die trying. The necklace around his neck seemed to grow heavier with each step Thunder took toward the south. Tom touched it once, feeling the cool silver and the smooth turquoise. "I'll try to be worthy of this," he whispered. "I'll try to be the man you should have been." The morning sun climbed higher. The desert stretched endless in all directions, and Tom Mackenzie rode toward his reckoning carrying warnings of war, wearing the necklace of a man he'd killed, and hoping that somehow before the end he could do enough good to outweigh all the bad. 3 days. That's all he had. 3 days to warn everyone he could. 3 days to prepare. 3 days before Dakota and his warriors came with fire and vengeance. 3 days to prove that redemption was possible, even for men haunted by the faces of those they'd killed. Tom rode hard through the morning heat, pushing Thunder faster than was wise in August sun. Every minute counted now. 3 days. 72 hours before Dakota and his warriors swept through the valley like fire through dry grass. 72 hours to convince skeptical ranchers that an Apache raid was coming, that the warning came from an Apache woman, that they needed to trust the word of a man most of them considered a coward for leaving the cavalry. The Sullivan place was first. Sean Sullivan had come from Ireland 15 years ago with nothing but determination and a strong back. He'd built a decent spread, raised 5 children, and survived droughts, locusts, and occasional Apache raids. He was standing by his barn when Tom rode up, pitchfork in hand, suspicion already hardening his weathered face. "Mackenzie," Sullivan said, not quite spitting the name, but close. "What brings you out here? Thought you preferred keeping to yourself these days." Tom dismounted, keeping his hands visible and non-threatening. The silver and turquoise necklace hung outside his shirt, catching the light. Sullivan's eyes fixed on it immediately, his expression darkening. "Is that Apache work you're wearing? What kind of man wears their jewelry?" "The kind trying to stay alive long enough to warn his neighbors," Tom said. "Sean, there's going to be a raid, 3 days from now. Young warriors coming from the mountains, hitting every ranch between here and Ruidoso. I need you to pack up your family and get to town, now." Sullivan's face reddened. "A raid? And how would you know about a raid? Mackenzie been consorting with the enemy. Have you wearing their trinkets, believing their lies?" "It's not a lie. My source is reliable." "Your source?" Sullivan barked a laugh. "Let me guess. Some Apache told you this. And you believed them. You always were soft on the Redskins. That's why you left the cavalry, isn't it? Couldn't stomach doing what needed doing." Tom forced himself to stay calm. "This isn't about me. This is about your family, your 5 children. Get them to safety while you still can. I'll not run for my land because some Indian lover comes spreading fear. For all I know, you're in league with them, helping them find which ranches are abandoned so they can loot them clean." Sullivan raised his pitchfork slightly. "Get off my property, Mackenzie, and if I see you wearing Apache jewelry again, I'll know whose side you're really on." Tom wanted to argue, wanted to shake some sense into the stubborn Irishman, but he could see it was useless. Sullivan had made up his mind, and pride was a powerful thing. Pride had gotten men killed before. Tom knew this too well. "I hope I'm wrong," Tom said, mounting Thunder. "I truly do. But if I'm right and you're still here in 3 days, make sure your children know how to hide, how to run. Don't let your pride get them killed." He rode away before Sullivan could respond, his stomach churning with frustration. 1 family warned, 0 families convinced. This was going to be harder than he'd thought. The Chen place was next. Wei Chen had come from China 20 years ago to work on the railroad, then homesteaded after the line was complete. His wife May and their 12-year-old son David worked the land alongside him. The Chinese faced even more prejudice than Tom did. Most white settlers considered them barely better than the Apache. But Tom had helped Chen once, back when a group of drunken cowboys had tried to run the family off their land. Chen had never forgotten. Wei was working in his small vegetable garden when Tom arrived coaxing beans and squash from the unforgiving soil. He straightened when he saw Tom wiping his hands on his worn trousers. "Mr. Mackenzie," Wei said, his English careful and precise. "This is unexpected. Is something wrong?" Tom told him everything. The attack, the timeline, the need to evacuate. Wei listened without interrupting, his weathered face giving nothing away. When Tom finished, Wei was silent for a long moment. "You risk your life to warn us," Wei finally said. "You could have stayed silent, stayed safe. Instead you come here. Why?" "Because it's the right thing to do. Because your family deserves a chance to survive." Wei studied the necklace around Tom's neck. "That is Apache work. Very old, very valuable. It was given to you." "Yes." "By the Apache who warned you about the raid." "Yes." Wei nodded slowly. "In my country we believe that debts must be repaid. That honor is more valuable than gold. I think this Apache person believes the same thing. I think you earned that necklace." He paused. "I believe you, Mr. Mackenzie. We will pack tonight and leave tomorrow. We will go to Lincoln. My brother has a store there. We will be safe." Relief flooded through Tom. "Thank you, Wei, for trusting me." "You trusted me when others would not," Wei said simply. "Now I trust you. That is how it should be." Tom spent the rest of that day riding to every ranch he could reach. The Rodriguez family, 7 people strong, believed him immediately. Carlos Rodriguez was a practical man who'd survived Apache raids before. He started organizing his family the moment Tom finished speaking. The widow Martha Hayes believed him too, though fear showed clearly in her eyes. She had 2 teenage sons and no husband to protect them. Tom helped her nail boards over windows and showed her boys how to load the old Springfield rifle her husband had left behind. The Anderson couple, both in their 70s, refused to leave. "We're too old to run," Samuel Anderson said. "If this is where we die, so be it. But we'll die on our own land." The black family freedmen who'd come west after the war seeking a life without persecution believed Tom instantly. Elijah Black understood what it meant to be hunted. He'd seen enough violence in his life to recognize a real warning when he heard one. By nightfall, Tom had reached 6 ranches. 2 families had refused to listen. 4 families were preparing to evacuate or defend. It wasn't enough. There were at least a dozen more homesteads scattered across the valley, but Tom couldn't reach them all alone. He needed help. He needed a plan. He rode to the Rodriguez ranch as the sun set. Carlos had the largest spread with solid adobe walls and a good well. It was the most defensible position in the valley. If they were going to make a stand, this was the place. Carlos met him at the gate. "I've been thinking," the older man said. "If we're going to fight, we should fight together. I sent my oldest son to gather the families who believed you. They'll be here by tomorrow night. We'll ford up here, all of us. Better than being scattered and picked off one by one." Tom felt a rush of gratitude. "That's smart thinking, Carlos. How many people can we count on? You're 4 families that believed you plus us. That's maybe 17 people total. 6 men who can shoot 4 women, 7 children." Carlos paused. "Not much of an army." "No," Tom agreed. "But it's more than nothing. And if we're smart, if we're prepared, maybe it'll be enough." They spent that night and the next day preparing. Tom taught them cavalry tactics for defending a fixed position. They built barricades from feed sacks and overturned wagons. They dug a shallow trench around the main house. They set wire traps in the tall grass, hidden snares that would tangle horses' legs or trip running men. They stockpiled ammunition, water, and medical supplies in the main room. Wei Chen proved surprisingly good at tactical thinking. He suggested creating false positions, scarecrows with hats that looked like sentries from a distance. Elijah Black knew blacksmithing and reinforced the main door with metal bars. Martha Hayes organized the women and children, creating a safe room in the interior of the house with no windows where the youngest could shelter if fighting started. Tom tried not to think about what would happen when Dakota arrived, tried not to imagine facing Desba's son across rifle sights. The boy had every right to his anger. His father had been killed by soldiers. Tom had been one of those soldiers. Had been the soldier specifically. If Dakota killed him, it would be justice of a sort. But Tom couldn't let him kill these families, these people who'd done nothing wrong, these people who just wanted to live in peace. On the evening of the second day, as the sun painted the western sky in shades of blood and gold, Tom sat with Wei Chen on the porch. They shared a pot of tea, bitter and strong, watching the land grow dark. "You know we might not survive this," Wei said quietly. "I know." "Then why not run north like the Apache woman suggested?" Tom touched the necklace around his neck. "Because I've run from too many things already. I've run from battles. I've run from guilt. I've run from the faces of men I killed. But running just makes the ghosts follow closer. At some point you have to stop. You have to turn around and face what's chasing you. And if it kills you, then at least I'll die standing still. Die doing something right instead of something wrong." Tom paused. "I've taken many Apache lives over 8 years. Killed them because I was following orders, because I was told they were the enemy. Some of them probably were. But some, like Naalnish, were just trying to protect their families, just trying to survive. I can't bring them back, can't undo what I did. But maybe if I save some lives, if I stand between innocent people and violence, maybe that counts for something." Wei was quiet for a long moment. "You are a good man, Tom Mackenzie. Broken, perhaps. Haunted, certainly. But good. The world needs more broken good men and fewer unbroken bad ones." That night, Tom wrote letters by candlelight. One to Aida and Kaya, thanking them for showing him that redemption was possible. One to Desba, apologizing for not following her advice, explaining that he had to try to save these people even if it cost him his life. He sealed them in oilcloth and gave them to Martha Hayes's younger son, with instructions to deliver them if Tom didn't survive. He didn't sleep that night. None of them did. They took turns on watch rifles, ready eyes scanning the darkness for movement. Every sound made them tense. Every shadow could be the first wave of attack. Dawn came on August 17, 1881, bright and merciless. The sky was clear blue, not a cloud in sight. Good weather for killing. Tom positioned the 6 shooters at key points around the house. Wei Chen on the roof with the sharpest eyes. Carlos and Elijah at the front barricade. Martha Hayes's 2 boys at the sides. Tom himself took the most exposed position, standing in the open where he could be seen, where he could try to talk before the shooting started. They came at 5:30 in the morning, appearing from the east like ghosts materializing from the dawn light. 19 Apache warriors on horseback moving in loose formation. Tom's cavalry training kicked in immediately. He counted them, assessed their weapons. Mostly rifles, some bows, all carried with the easy confidence of men who knew how to use them. At the center of the formation rode a young man on a black horse. Even from a distance, Tom could see the resemblance. Dakota had his mother's eyes and his father's strong jaw. He wore his hair long with a red band across his forehead. He carried a Winchester rifle, the same model Naalnish had been holding when he died. Perhaps the same actual rifle kept as a reminder of what had been lost. The warriors stopped about 80 yards out, just beyond effective rifle range. For a long moment nobody moved, nobody spoke. The morning air was so still that Tom could hear his own heartbeat loud as a drum in his ears. Then Dakota rode forward alone, stopping at 50 yards. Close enough to talk. Close enough to shoot. "White men," he called in English, his accent thick but understandable. "You should not be here. This place is marked for cleansing. Leave now and you will live. Stay and you will die." Tom stepped forward, keeping his Winchester pointed at the ground. "We're not leaving. This is our home." But it doesn't have to be bloodshed. You can turn around. Right away. Nobody has to die today." Dakota's eyes narrowed. Then they fixed on the necklace around Tom's neck. Tom saw the moment of recognition, saw shock and fury and disbelief flash across the young man's face. "Where did you get that?" Dakota's voice was deadly quiet. "Where did you get my father's necklace?" Tom's mouth went dry. This was it, the moment he'd been dreading. "Your mother gave it to me." "Liar!" Dakota's scream echoed across the valley. "My mother would never give a white man my father's necklace. You stole it, you killed him and stole it." "No, I saved your sisters, Aita and Kaya. They were lost in the desert, attacked by coyotes. I brought them home. Your mother gave me this as payment of a life debt." Dakota shook his head violently. "More lies. My sisters are safe in camp. They were never lost. 3 days ago. Ask your mother. Ask Aita. I took them home. Your mother warned me about this raid. Told me to run north. But I couldn't let innocent people die." For just a moment, doubt flickered in Dakota's eyes. Then it hardened back into rage. "You dare speak my mother's name. You dare claim she helped you. I know who you are. I know that necklace. You are the one, the soldier who killed my father, the one who shot him while he protected Aita." Tom didn't deny it. Couldn't deny it. "Yes, I was there. I fired the shot. It was the worst thing I've ever done. I've lived with that guilt every day since. Your mother knows. She gave me the necklace anyway, because I saved her children, because even enemies can choose mercy." "Mercy?" Dakota spat the word. "You want mercy? My father showed you his back, showed you he was protecting a child, and you shot him anyway. Where was mercy then?" "There wasn't any. I made a terrible choice. I can't take it back. Can't fix it. All I can do is try to do better. Try to protect life instead of taking it. That's why I'm here. Why I'm asking you to turn around. You think protecting these white settlers makes up for killing my father? No, nothing makes up for it. Nothing ever will. But I have to try." Dakota raised his rifle, pointing it directly at Tom's chest. "Then you will die trying." Before either could fire, a voice rang out from behind the Apache line. A woman's voice sharp with command and desperation. "Dakota, stop, lower your weapon. That's an order from your mother." Tom's heart lurched. He knew that voice. Desba. She rode through the line of warriors on a paint horse, Aita and Kaya seated behind her. The girls' faces were tear-streaked and terrified. Desba looked like she'd ridden all night, her clothes dusty, her face drawn with exhaustion. "Mother." Dakota lowered his rifle, slightly confusion evident. "What are you doing here? Why did you bring my sisters?" Desba rode right up beside her son, placing her horse between him and Tom. "Because everything he told you is true. Aita and Kaya were lost. For 3 days. This man saved them from coyotes. He fed them, healed them, protected them from evil white men who wanted to sell them. He brought them home to me safely. But the necklace, I gave it to him," Desba said firmly, "as payment of a life debt, as a symbol of honor. He killed your father, yes. That truth stands. But he also saved your sisters. Both truths exist at once." Dakota looked from his mother to Tom and back again. "You gave him father's necklace, the most sacred thing we own, to the man who killed him." "Yes." "How could you—" The pain in Dakota's voice was raw, stripped of the rage, just a boy's anguish at his mother's betrayal. Aita slid off the horse and ran to Dakota. She grabbed his arm. "Brother, please listen. Tom is good. He could have hurt us. He could have left us to die. But he didn't. He risked his life for us. He fought bad men to protect us. Mother is right." Kaya joined her sister. "Brother Tom sang to me when I was scared. He let us sleep in his house, and he slept outside. He gave us his food. He's not like the soldiers who killed father. He's different." Dakota looked at his sisters, at the genuine affection in their faces when they spoke of Tom, at his mother's stern expression, at the necklace around Tom's neck catching the morning light. The morning sun climbed higher, burning away the last shadows, leaving everyone exposed in harsh light. Dakota sat frozen on his black horse, caught between the family he loved and the vengeance he'd fed on for 2 years. Behind him, 18 Apache warriors waited, their rifles ready, their faces hard. They'd come for blood. They'd lost fathers, brothers, sons to cavalry raids. They'd watched their villages burn, their people driven onto reservations where starvation was policy and dignity a memory. They wanted justice, even if justice looked like murder. Tom stood in the open, knowing that 19 rifles could cut him down in seconds. But he didn't move, didn't raise his weapon. If this was where it ended, at least it would end honestly. At least these families behind him would have time to escape while the Apache dealt with him. "Dakota," Desba said softly, her voice carrying across the silence. "Your father did not want you to live like this, consumed by hate. Naalnish believed in peace. He only fought because he had to protect us. He would not want his death to poison your soul. Father is dead because of him." Dakota pointed at Tom, his hand shaking. "How can you ask me to forgive that?" "I'm not asking you to forgive," Desba replied. "Forgiveness is yours to give or withhold. I'm asking you to choose what kind of man you want to be. A man ruled by the past, by grief and rage, or a man who builds something new. Your father chose to protect life, even when it cost him his own. Can you do less?" Dakota's face twisted with emotion. Tears ran down his cheeks, though his jaw stayed clenched with fury. "I see him every night, Mother. I see Father falling. I hear the gunshot. I feel his blood on my hands. How do I stop seeing it?" "You don't," Tom said quietly. "I see it too. Every night. Every single night for 2 years. Your father's face. The way he fell. The necklace hitting the dust. I don't think those images ever leave. We just learn to carry them." Dakota's eyes snapped to Tom. "Don't you dare compare your guilt to my pain. You took everything from us." "You're right. I did. And nothing I do will ever balance that. But your sisters were dying in the desert. I could have ridden past, could have told myself it wasn't my problem. Instead, I chose to save them. I chose to bring them home to your mother. I chose to risk my life protecting them from men who would have hurt them. Not because it makes up for killing your father. Nothing does. But because it was the only choice I could live with." One of the warriors behind Dakota spoke up in Apache. Tom caught enough words to understand the meaning. "Why are we waiting? Why are we listening to this white man's lies? We came to fight. Let us fight." Other voices joined in, angry and impatient. They'd ridden hard for 2 days. They'd prepared for war, and now their leader's mother was asking them to stop, to listen to the man who killed their leader's father. It was madness. Dakota raised his hand and the voices fell silent. The authority in that gesture showed how much respect these young warriors had for him. He was only 17, but they'd follow him into death itself. That kind of loyalty was earned, not given. "I cannot ask my warriors to turn away," Dakota said, speaking to his mother, but loud enough for everyone to hear. "They have lost too much, suffered too much. They came here for justice." "Justice or vengeance," Desba challenged. "Those are not the same thing." "Sometimes they are." Dakota looked at the settlers gathered behind Tom. Wei Chen on the roof. Carlos and Elijah at the barricades. Martha Hayes visible through a window, rifle in hand. "These people took our land. They burn our forests. They kill our deer and buffalo. They poison our water holes. They are the reason we starve, the reason we die. Why should we spare them?" It was Elijah Black who answered, stepping forward despite Carlos's whispered warning. The former slave walked with a slight, limp legacy of shackles worn too long in his youth. He stopped beside Tom, unarmed, hands open. "Because we aren't your enemy," Elijah said. "I know what it's like to be hunted, to watch my people suffer. My mother was sold away when I was 8. My father was beaten to death when I was 12. I spent 18 years in chains before the war freed me. So I understand your anger, your pain. But look at us. Really look. We're not soldiers, not cavalry. We're just people trying to survive same as you." Dakota stared at Elijah. "You are black." "I am." "Your people were slaves." "Yes." "And now you stand with the whites who enslaved you." Elijah shook his head. "I stand with people who treat me with respect. Carlos gave me work when nobody else would. Wei Chen shared his food when I had none. Tom here helped me build my house when others tried to burn it down. These aren't the people who hurt me. These are the people who helped me, just like Tom helped your sisters." Another warrior spoke, this one in English. He was older, maybe 25, with scars across his bare chest. "Pretty words, but words don't bring back the dead. Words don't feed starving children." "No," Wei Chen called from the roof. "But killing us won't either. You burn our homes, you'll feel justice for maybe one day, maybe 1 week. Then what the soldiers will come. More soldiers than you've ever seen. They'll hunt you until none of you are left. Is that the legacy you want? More death, more suffering." "What legacy do we have now?" the scarred warrior shot back. "We're already hunted, already dying. At least this way we die fighting." Tom understood that sentiment, had felt it himself in his darkest moments, the urge to go down swinging rather than fade away. It was seductive, that kind of thinking, clean and simple, but it was also suicide dressed up as honor. "You're dying because old men on both sides keep choosing war," Tom said. "Washington sends soldiers because they're told Apache are savages. Your elders raid ranches because they're told whites are devils. Meanwhile, the actual people, the ones just trying to live, get caught in the middle. We're all being used, all being sacrificed for someone else's idea of how things should be." "So, what do you suggest?" Dakota asked, his voice heavy with sarcasm. "We all hold hands and sing, 'Make peace while our people starve on reservations.'" "No," Tom said. "I suggest you let these families go. Let them live. Prove that Apache can show mercy even when they have power. Show everyone that you're better than the soldiers who burned your villages, that you're better than the politicians who broke every treaty. Be better than me, better than the man I was when I killed your father." Dakota dismounted. He walked forward slowly, his rifle held loosely at his side. He stopped 5 feet from Tom, close enough that Tom could see the pain and exhaustion in his young face. This was a boy forced to be a man too soon, forced to lead warriors into battle when he should have been learning to hunt from his father, learning to make knives, learning to laugh. "You know what the worst part is?" Dakota said quietly. "My sisters like you. I see it in their faces. They trust you. And my mother, who never trusted any white man, she gave you father's necklace. The most sacred thing we own. So now I'm supposed to what? Pretend you didn't murder my father. Pretend everything is fine." "No," Tom said. "You're supposed to live with the truth, that I killed your father, that I saved your sisters, that both things are real, that people are complicated, and life isn't a story where everyone is pure good or pure evil. You're supposed to choose who you want to be going forward. That's all any of us can do." Dakota raised his rifle, pressing the barrel against Tom's chest right over his heart. Tom didn't flinch, didn't move. If this was Dakota's choice, he'd accept it. Behind him he heard Carlos and Elijah raising their weapons, but Tom held up his hand. "No, let this play out. Give me one good reason why I shouldn't kill you right now," Dakota said. "I don't have one," Tom replied honestly. "You have every right. Every reason. If you pull that trigger, it's justice. I won't fight it, won't resist. But before you do, understand something. If you kill me, your mother will have to choose between you and her honor. Your sisters will have to reconcile the man who saved them with the man you murdered, and every warrior here will have to explain to the soldiers who come next why they killed a man standing peacefully. Those are the costs. If you can pay them, then pull the trigger." Dakota's finger moved to the trigger. Tom watched the internal struggle playing out on the young man's face. This was the moment. Life or death balanced on the choice of a 17-year-old boy carrying more pain than anyone should have to carry. Aita's voice broke the silence. "Brother, please, I love you. I loved Father. But Tom is good. He is. If you kill him, you'll be killing the man who saved me and Kaya. Can you live with that?" Dakota's hand trembled. The rifle wavered. Then, with a sound that might have been a sob or a scream or both, he lowered the weapon. He stepped back, turned away, his shoulders shaking. Desba dismounted and went to her son. She wrapped her arms around him as he broke down, 2 years of grief and rage finally overwhelming the dam he'd built to contain them. He cried like he probably hadn't cried since the day his father died. Loud, wrenching sobs that came from somewhere deep and broken. The other warriors shifted uncomfortably. Several looked angry that their leader had shown weakness. Others looked relieved. One of them, the scarred warrior, rode forward. "So what now?" he demanded. "We just leave, pretend we didn't come for war." "We leave," Desba said firmly, still holding her son. "We go home. We tell the elders what happened here, that we showed mercy when we could have shown death, that we proved we are not savages, that we are people with honor." "The elders won't be happy," the warrior said. "The elders aren't here," Desba replied. "I am, and I say we leave. Anyone who disagrees can challenge me. Now." Nobody moved. Desba's reputation as a warrior was well known. She'd killed more soldiers than most of the men here. If she said they were leaving, they were leaving. Slowly, reluctantly, the warriors began turning their horses. Some looked disappointed. Some looked confused. A few looked almost grateful for a reason not to fight. They'd been prepared to die today. Maybe some part of them was relieved they didn't have to. Dakota finally pulled away from his mother. His face was blotchy and wet with tears, but some of the tension had left his body. He looked exhausted. He looked his age 17 instead of the hardened warrior he'd been trying to be. He walked back to Tom. For a moment they stood facing each other. Then Dakota did something unexpected. He reached out and touched the necklace around Tom's neck. "My father made beautiful things," he said softly. "Beautiful knives, beautiful jewelry. He had gentle hands, kind hands. I have his hands." He held up his own hands, long-fingered and strong. "But I've used them for war, for violence. Maybe that's wrong. Maybe Father would be disappointed." "Your father would be proud of you," Tom said. "You're brave. You're loyal. You love your family. Those are his gifts to you. The rest, the anger and violence, that's what the world forced on you. That's not who you are." Dakota was silent for a long moment. Then he reached to his belt and pulled out a knife. Tom tensed, but Dakota just held it out handle first. "My father made this. One of his last works before he died. I want you to have it." Tom stared at the knife. It was beautiful. The blade was polished obsidian black as midnight, sharp enough to shave with. The handle was carved wood, wrapped in leather decorated with small turquoise stones. "I can't take this," Tom said. "You must," Dakota insisted. "My mother gave you Father's necklace to show protection. I give you his knife to show, I don't know, not forgiveness. I'm not ready for that. But maybe understanding. Maybe acceptance that things are more complicated than I thought." Tom took the knife with shaking hands. "I'll treasure it. I promise." Dakota nodded. Then he turned to his mother. "We should go, before I change my mind." As the Apache prepared to leave, Aita and Kaya ran to Tom one last time. They hugged him fiercely. "You did good," Aita whispered. "Father would understand. I think he does understand." "Plant the seeds I gave you," Kaya added. "Make beautiful things grow, like Father did." Tom nodded, not trusting his voice. Carlos Rodriguez approached as the Apache rode away. "I don't believe what I just saw," he said. "We should all be dead. That young warrior had every reason to kill you, to kill all of us." "He chose better," Tom said simply. "We all chose better." Wei Chen climbed down from the roof. "That woman, the mother, she is remarkable. To ride all night to stop her son. To risk her relationship with him to save your life. That is honor of the highest kind." "Yes," Tom agreed, watching Desba ride away with her children. "Yes, it is." The settlers spent the rest of the day in a strange state of exhausted relief. They'd prepared for death and found life instead. They'd expected war and got peace. It felt unreal, like waking from a nightmare, only to find the sun shining. That evening, as the families prepared to return to their homes, Martha Hayes approached Tom. "What you did today, standing out there unarmed talking instead of shooting, that took more courage than any battle. You saved us all." "Desba saved us," Tom corrected. "And Dakota. They chose mercy." "Because you gave them a reason to choose it," Martha insisted. "Don't minimize what you did." Tom didn't know how to respond to that. He'd spent 2 years defining himself by his worst moment, by the shot that killed Nalnish. Maybe it was time to let other moments matter too. Not to erase the bad, but to acknowledge the good alongside it. To be a whole person instead of just a collection of regrets. As night fell and the families dispersed, Tom stood alone looking toward the mountains where Three Sisters Canyons hid. Somewhere up there, Desba was probably explaining to the elders what had happened. Dakota was probably sitting by a fire trying to understand why he'd lowered his rifle. Aita and Kaya were probably already asleep, safe in their wickiup. Tom touched the necklace around his neck and the knife at his belt. 2 gifts from a family he'd destroyed and then partially saved. Symbols of the complicated mess that was human existence. We hurt each other, hurt each. We heal each other. Sometimes we do both at once. He mounted Thunder and rode toward his ranch as stars filled the sky. He had seeds to plant, seeds that Kaya had given him, seeds that would grow into herbs that could heal wounds. It seemed fitting, growing something good from something broken. His dogs greeted him with enthusiastic barking when he arrived home. His horses nickered from the corral. His small ranch looked exactly as he'd left it 3 days ago, but Tom felt like he'd been gone for years. He'd left as a man running from his past. He was returning as a man who'd finally turned to face it. That night, for the first time in 743 nights, Tom Mackenzie slept without nightmares. The 23 ghosts were still there. Nyalnish's face was still among them, but they didn't accuse anymore. They just watched, waiting to see what he'd do next. The next morning, Tom woke with the sun and began digging a garden plot beside his house. He planted the seeds Kaya had given him, working the hard earth until sweat soaked his shirt. It was good work, honest work, the kind of work that built life instead of taking it. He was still digging when he noticed the pain in his shoulder, a dull ache that had been there since yesterday but was growing worse. He stripped off his shirt to check and found a small wound he didn't remember getting. A bullet graze, probably from the brief exchange of gunfire with Brennan's men days ago. He'd been so focused on everything else that he hadn't noticed. It was infected, red and hot and already starting to smell wrong. Tom cleaned it with whiskey, same as he'd cleaned Aita's wound. But unlike Aita, he was alone. Nobody to help change bandages. Nobody to bring him water when fever started. Nobody to notice if the infection spread. He worked through that day and the next, but the fever grew worse. By the 3rd day, he could barely stand. The wound on his shoulder had turned black at the edges. Gangrene maybe, or blood poisoning. Either way, it was bad. Tom lay on his bedroll in the small adobe house and accepted what was coming. He'd survived Apache raids and outlaw ambushes. He'd faced down 19 warriors and a boy with every reason to kill him. But he wouldn't survive an infected wound. There was poetry in that somehow. Surviving war only to die from something so small. On the 4th day, as Tom drifted in and out of consciousness, he heard voices. Footsteps. Someone entered his house. He tried to reach for his rifle, but his arm wouldn't obey. "Easy, Tom Mackenzie," a familiar voice said. "Desba. We are here to help." Through fever-blurred eyes, Tom saw her. Desba, Aita, and Kaya. The 3 of them had ridden all this way, had somehow known he was in trouble. "How?" Tom croaked. "Aida dreamed you were sick," Desba explained, already examining his wound. "Apache believe dreams tell truth. So we came." She looked at the infection and her face grew serious. "This is very bad. You should have come to us." "Didn't want to bother you. Saving your life is not a bother. It is repaying a debt that can never be fully repaid." For the next 3 weeks, Desba and her daughters nursed Tom back from the edge of death. They used herbs Tom had never heard of. They performed rituals he didn't understand. They changed his bandages and brought him water, and kept him alive through sheer determination. Dakota came too after the first week. He didn't say much, just sat with Tom in the evenings teaching him Apache words, teaching him the names of plants and animals, teaching him Tom realized the things Nalnish would have taught his own sons. The fever finally broke on the 21st day. Tom woke to sunlight streaming through his window and the smell of something cooking. For a moment he couldn't remember where he was or what had happened. His mind felt clear for the first time in weeks, scrubbed clean by the fire of infection that had nearly killed him. Desba sat by his bedside grinding something in a stone bowl. She looked up when his eyes opened and relief flickered across her face. "You are back with us," she said simply. "How long?" 3 weeks. You were very sick. We thought you might die." Tom tried to sit up and found he could barely lift his head. His body felt like it belonged to someone else, all weakness and trembling. Desba helped him drink water, supporting his head with a gentleness that surprised him. "Why did you come?" Tom asked when he could speak again. "You warned me. You gave me the necklace. The debt was paid." Desba set the bowl aside. "Aida had a dream. She saw you lying alone, burning with fever. She woke me in the middle of the night crying. She said we had to go to you, that you needed help. And you believed her. Dreams are sacred to my people. When someone you care about appears in your dreams, suffering, you listen." She paused. "Also, Aida said that Father appeared in her dream too, standing beside you. She said Father was worried about you." Tom's throat tightened. "Nyalnish was worried about me. The man I killed." "According to my daughter, yes." Desba's eyes were unreadable. "I do not know if dreams show us truth or just what we wish to see, but we came anyway, and we found you 3 days from death." Over the next week, as Tom slowly regained strength, the strange little household found a rhythm. Desba slept in the main room, the girls in Tom's bedroom, and Tom himself on a makeshift bed by the fireplace. Dakota came and went hunting rabbits and deer, providing meat for everyone. He still didn't talk much to Tom, but the hostility had faded into something more like cautious coexistence. Kaya chattered constantly, telling Tom stories about life in the Apache camp, teaching him words in her language, showing him how to weave grass into baskets. Aida was quieter, but watched everything with those ancient eyes, occasionally correcting Tom's pronunciation or adding details to her sister's stories. It was Aida who first noticed Tom's hands shaking when he tried to eat. The infection had done something to his nerves. His right hand, his shooting hand, trembled constantly now. Some days were better than others, but he knew what it meant. He'd never shoot with the same accuracy again. The cavalry skill that had defined him for 8 years was gone. "Does it hurt?" Aida asked, watching him struggle to hold a spoon. "No. Just won't do what I tell it to. Like when I broke my arm falling from a tree. It healed wrong. Mother had to break it again and set it right. Maybe your hand needs to be broken and set right." Tom smiled despite himself. "I don't think it works that way with nerves, but thank you for the thought." That evening, as Tom sat outside watching the sunset, Dakota appeared beside him. The young warrior had been gone for 2 days hunting. He carried a fresh deer haunch already butchered and ready for cooking. "Your hand," Dakota said without preamble. "It's broken. The infection damaged the nerves. It happens. You can't shoot anymore." "No, not accurately." Dakota was silent for a long moment. "A man who can't shoot out here, that's dangerous. You'll be vulnerable. I know. My father couldn't shoot either. His eyes were bad. He used knives instead, made them, threw them. He could hit a target at 30 feet without missing. Dakota paused. I could teach you, if you want. Tom looked at the young man in surprise. You'd teach me? My mother says debts work both ways. You saved my sisters. My mother saved you. Now maybe I save you by teaching you to survive without a gun. Dakota's face was unreadable. Also, it would be a way to remember father, to honor his skills by passing them on. I'd be honored, Tom said quietly. So began an unexpected education. Each day, as Tom grew stronger, Dakota taught him knife work. Not just throwing, though they practiced that too, but knife fighting, knife making, knife care. The intimacy of learning a skill from the son of the man he'd killed was not lost on Tom. Every lesson felt like penance and privilege mixed together. Desba watched these sessions from a distance, her expression complicated. One evening, after Dakota had left, she approached Tom. My son is changing, she said. Since the day at the Rodriguez ranch, since he chose not to kill you, something shifted in him. He's quieter, thinks more, acts less from anger. Is that good or bad? I don't know yet. As a mother, I want my children to be safe. A warrior who thinks too much sometimes hesitates at the wrong moment. But as a person, I think maybe thinking more and acting less from rage might save his life someday. He's a good man, Tom said. Young, but good. You raised him well. We raised him well, Desba corrected. Nayalnish and I. My husband gave him kindness and creativity. I gave him strength and survival. Together we tried to give him balance. But then Nayalnish died, and there was no balance anymore. Just survival and anger. She sat down beside Tom, looking out at the darkening sky. Do you know what I realized? When I gave you that necklace, when I rode all night to stop the raid, when I came here to save your life, I realized I was tired. So tired of carrying hate. It's heavy, you know. Hate weighs more than anything. I carried it for 2 years and it nearly crushed me. I understand, Tom said. I've been carrying it too. Guilt, which is just hate turned inward. Yes, exactly that. Desba turned to look at him. Maybe that's what this is really about. Not justice or revenge or evening scales. Maybe it's just about putting down things that are too heavy to carry anymore. They sat in comfortable silence as stars began appearing. Tom thought about weight. The weight of 23 ghosts. The weight of a silver necklace. The weight of choices made in the heat of battle. Desba was right. It was exhausting. Maybe it was time to put some of it down. By the end of the 3rd week, Tom could walk without assistance. His shoulder was healing, though the scar would be impressive. His hand still shook, but he was learning to compensate, to use his left hand more, to throw knives with his right, using momentum rather than fine control. One morning he woke to find Desba packing her things. His heart sank. He'd grown accustomed to the sounds of people in his house, the chatter of children, the quiet presence of someone who understood complicated grief. The thought of returning to solitude felt suffocating. You're leaving, he said. We must. We've been gone nearly a month. The elders will be worried. Also, winter is coming. We need to prepare the camp, store food, make warm clothing. Of course, I understand. Aida and Kaya were less stoic. Both girls hugged Tom tightly, making him promise to visit to write if he learned how to remember them always. Plant the seeds, Kaya reminded him for the 100th time. Make beautiful things grow. I will. I promise. Dakota was the last to say goodbye. He handed Tom a wrapped bundle. Inside were 3 knives, each one different. One for throwing, one for close fighting, one for daily work like cutting rope or preparing food. My father's work, Dakota said. The last knives he made before he died. I've kept them all this time. I want you to have them. Dakota, I can't. You can. You must. The young man's voice was firm. These knives are part of my father. By giving them to you, I'm saying that he lives on. Not just in my memory, but in the world. In your hands, using them to do good. That matters to me. Tom took the knives with hands that shook for reasons that had nothing to do with nerve damage. "I'll use them well. I swear it." Dakota nodded. Then he did something unexpected. He embraced Tom briefly but genuinely. "You're not the man who killed my father anymore. You're just Tom, my mother's friend, my sister's protector. Maybe someday my friend too." After they left, Tom stood in the doorway of his house watching them ride away. Desba turned, once raised her hand in farewell, and then they were gone, disappearing into the landscape they knew so well. The silence that followed was profound. Tom walked through his empty house, seeing the small signs they'd left behind. A basket Kaya had been weaving left on the table, one of Aita's hair ties forgotten on the windowsill, the smell of the herbs Desba had used to treat his wound still lingering in the air. He went outside and looked at the garden plot he'd started. The seeds had sprouted in his absence, small green shoots pushing up through the hard earth, life insisting on itself despite drought and difficulty. Tom knelt and carefully weeded around them, giving them space to grow. Over the next 6 months, Tom rebuilt his life. The garden thrived, providing herbs he traded for supplies in town. He practiced knife throwing every day until his right hand, even with its tremor, could hit a target at 20 feet more often than not. He learned to shoot left-handed, though it would never match his old accuracy. News came in winter that Colt Brennan had been shot dead by a bounty hunter in El Paso. Jake Morris and Billy Rourke had surrendered to authorities in Santa Fe, hoping for lighter sentences by testifying against their former boss. Mexican Pete had died from his injuries 2 days after the confrontation. The threat that had once seemed so dangerous had dissolved like morning mist. The other ranchers gradually accepted him back into the community. Word had spread about the standoff at the Rodriguez Ranch, about how Tom had warned everyone about how he'd talked down 19 Apache warriors without firing a shot. People who'd called him a coward for leaving the cavalry now called him something else. Peacemaker, bridge builder. Some even said hero, though Tom hated that word. Wei Chen visited often, bringing his family. They'd become genuine friends, bonded by the shared experience of facing death and choosing life. Carlos Rodriguez threw a celebration when his daughter got married, and Tom was invited as a guest of honor. Even Sean Sullivan, who'd refused to believe the warning, eventually apologized. "I was wrong about you, Mackenzie," Sullivan admitted over whiskey at the general store. "You tried to save us all, even me who called you traitor. That takes a bigger man than I am." "You weren't wrong about everything," Tom replied. "I did leave the cavalry. I did have doubts about the war. But you stayed human. That's what matters. You kept seeing people as people, not just as sides in a conflict. That's rare." Tom thought about that conversation often. Seeing people as people. Not as enemies or allies, not as good or bad, just as humans trying to survive with whatever tools they had. That's what Desba had done when she gave him the necklace. What Dakota had done when he lowered his rifle. What Aita and Kaya had done when they trusted him in the desert. Spring came, and with it news from the north. Geronimo had broken out of the San Carlos reservation with a group of warriors. The army was mobilizing. There would be more raids, more battles, more death. The cycle continued, fed by fear and anger and old grievances. Tom heard all this and felt the familiar weight trying to settle back on his shoulders. The urge to do something to fix it, to stop the violence. But he was one man with a trembling hand and a small ranch. What could he possibly do? The answer came from an unexpected direction. Martha Hayes appeared at his door one morning with a proposal. "Some of us have been talking," she said. "We want to start a school, a real school, not just reading lessons in someone's parlor. A place where all children can learn. White, Mexican, Chinese, even Apache if any come." "That's ambitious," Tom said. "It is, but we think it's necessary. If we're going to live here together, really live here, not just survive side by side, we need to understand each other. Children are best at that. They haven't learned to hate yet." "What do you need from me?" "Land. Your ranch sits right between the white settlements and the Apache territories. It's neutral ground. We want to build the school here if you'll donate a few acres." Tom thought about Aita and Kaya learning English, about Dakota teaching knife skills, about Desba choosing honor over vengeance, about seeds growing in hard ground. "Yes," he said. "Take whatever land you need." Construction began in June. The school was simple, just one room with a wood stove and handmade desks. But it was solid, built to last. They named it Three Rivers School after the canyon where Tom had found the girls where everything had changed. Tom rode to the Apache camp to tell Desba about the school, to invite Apache children to attend. He half expected to be turned away at the canyon entrance, but the scouts recognized the necklace and let him pass. Desba greeted him warmly, and if anyone in the camp thought it strange that a white man visited their warrior woman so openly, they kept their opinions private. They sat by her fire, and Tom explained the school. "It's not charity," he emphasized, "and it's not conversion. We're not trying to make Apache children white, just giving them tools. English reading, arithmetic, things that might help them survive in a world that's changing whether we like it or not." Desba listened carefully. "The elders will never allow it. They don't trust white education. They've seen what boarding schools do, taking children away, beating the Apache out of them. This is different. Children would come during the day and go home at night. They'd keep their language, their culture. We'd just add to it, not replace it." "I believe you. But convincing the elders—" She shook her head. "It would take a miracle." The miracle came from Aida. Now 11 years old and sharp as obsidian, she'd been listening to the conversation. She stood and spoke with authority beyond her years. "The white world is coming whether we fight it or not. The soldiers are too many. The settlers are too many. We can close our eyes and die, or we can open them and adapt. Father believed in peace. He believed in learning. If he were alive, he would want this school. He would want us to have every advantage." The elders, when the proposal was brought to them, were divided. Some saw it as betrayal. Others saw it as survival. The debate lasted 3 days. In the end, it was Desba's voice that tipped the balance. "My daughter is right," she said. "We can curse the changing world, or we can give our children tools to survive in it. I choose survival. I choose life. Any family that wants to send their children to this school, I will support them." 3 Apache families agreed to try. 6 children, ages 7 to 13. They came to Three Rivers School that September, nervous and suspicious. But they came. Aida and Kaya were among them. Tom taught practical skills, mathematics through carpentry and farming, English through stories, geography through maps of places they'd never see but needed to understand. Martha Hayes taught reading and writing. Wei Chen taught basic Chinese, which fascinated all the students. Carlos Rodriguez taught Spanish. It was chaotic. Cultural misunderstandings happened daily. Sometimes children fought, bringing playground conflicts from larger conflicts their parents carried. But slowly, grudgingly, it worked. White children learned Apache words. Apache children learned English phrases. A Mexican boy and a Chinese girl became best friends. The son of a cavalry officer learned to weave baskets from Kaya. Small miracles. Tiny seeds of something different. Tom stood one afternoon watching the children play together during recess, and he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not the naive hope of youth, but the scarred, earned hope of someone who'd seen the worst and chosen to believe in better anyway. Desba visited the school one day officially to check on her daughters, but really Tom suspected to see if this experiment could actually work. She watched the children, watched Tom teaching knife safety to a mixed group of students, watched Aida helping a white boy with his reading. "This is strange," she said to Tom. "All of this, you and me after everything. Our children learning together, peace happening in small moments. Strange but good." "I think so. Yes, strange but good." She paused. "Naalnish would have loved this place. He always said the war would end when we stopped seeing sides and started seeing people. He was a wise man." "He was. And I think—" her voice caught slightly. "I think he would say you've honored his death better than vengeance ever could. You've turned it into something that grows instead of something that destroys." That night Tom sat on his porch listening to the sounds of the desert. Coyotes calling in the distance, wind moving through the sage, the comfortable sounds of his dogs sleeping nearby. He touched the necklace as he did every night, feeling the smooth silver and turquoise. He thought about where he'd been 3 years ago. A soldier following orders, shooting enemies he'd been told were savages, collecting a body count like it meant something. He thought about the moment he'd pulled the trigger on Nyalnish, the worst thing he'd ever done. The choice that had haunted him every night for 2 years. But that choice had led to other choices. To saving Aita and Kaya. To facing Desba and receiving mercy instead of vengeance. To standing between violence and innocence. To building a school where children learned that people who looked different weren't enemies, just people. None of it erased what he'd done. Nalnish was still dead. 23 warriors were still dead. Those ghosts would never leave. But maybe that was okay. Maybe you weren't supposed to forget. Maybe you were supposed to remember, and let that remembering push you toward doing better. Tom pulled out the knives Dakota had given him. Even in the dim light they were beautiful. Nyalnish's work, the last things he'd made before soldiers came to his village, before Tom had ended his life. These knives had been crafted to create, not destroy, to cut leather for moccasins, to prepare food for family, to shape wood into useful things. And now they were here in Tom's hands, being used to teach children how to be safe around blades, how to respect tools, how to build instead of break. Tom thought that was fitting. Nalnish's final work, continuing his legacy of creation long after his death. Not through vengeance or bloodshed, but through teaching and growth and small daily choices to do good. As autumn deepened and the first cold winds began blowing down from the mountains, Tom received word that Geronimo had been captured. The last of the Apache wars was ending. It wasn't a happy ending. Most of the Apache would be sent to Florida, far from their homeland, to prisoner of war camps, where many would die of disease and despair. The injustice of it burned in Tom's chest. But here in this one small place, something different was happening. 6 Apache children were learning English while teaching their language to others. White children were learning that the savage Apache were just people. Mexican and Chinese families were finding acceptance. Small bridges were being built person by person, day by day. It wasn't enough. It could never be enough to balance the larger injustices. But it was something. It was a seed planted in hard ground, growing despite drought and difficulty. 15 years later, Tom Mackenzie stood at that same spot on his porch, now 49 years old, his hair more gray than brown. 3 Rivers School had grown to 2 rooms and 32 students. Aita, now 25, taught there alongside Martha Hayes. She'd become a bridge between communities, respected by both Apache and whites, fluent in 3 languages, sharp as the knives her father had made. Kaya, now 22, was in Lincoln studying medicine with a doctor who'd agreed to take her as an apprentice. She wrote letters describing her studies, talking about coming back to help her people, about combining Apache healing traditions with white medicine. Dakota had married, started a family, and became a voice for peaceful coexistence within his community. He still visited Tom sometimes, and they'd sit in comfortable silence, throwing knives at targets no longer teacher and student but friends. Even Kuruk, who'd once held a rifle to Tom's chest ready to kill him, had softened with time. He brought his own children to 3 Rivers School now. He and Tom were not friends, would likely never be friends, but they'd learned something more valuable: respect born from shared loss and the hard work of choosing peace over vengeance. Desba had aged gracefully, her gray hair now more white than black, but her eyes still sharp. She came to school gatherings, sitting in the back, watching children who would have been enemies in her youth, playing together, learning together, becoming friends. On this particular evening she sat with Tom on his porch, both of them comfortable in the silence that had grown between them over the years. "Do you still see him?" she asked finally. "Nalnish. In your dreams?" "Sometimes. But it's different now. He doesn't accuse, doesn't demand. He just watches. Sometimes I think he's almost proud." "I think he is," Desba said quietly. "I think he's proud of you, of what you built from the worst thing you ever did, of the children learning in the school built where once there was only war. That's a kind of resurrection, I think, taking death and growing life from it." They sat together as stars appeared, two people who should have been enemies bound together by tragedy and choice and the complicated work of building something better from something broken. Tom touched the silver necklace as he'd done 10,000 times before, but this time instead of weight, he felt something else. Gratitude. For the chance to do better. For the mercy he'd been shown. For the strange winding path that had led from the worst moment of his life to this quiet evening watching the future being built, one child at a time. The desert wind carried sounds from the school building where someone was practicing reading aloud, a child's voice stumbling over English words, trying hard, learning, life continuing, growing, changing. The silver promise fulfilled not through vengeance but through the patient, difficult work of building peace one day, one choice, one small kindness at a time. And somewhere Tom thought maybe Nyalnish was watching too. Maybe all 23 ghosts were watching. Maybe they could finally rest, knowing that their deaths had not been meaningless, that something good had grown from all that pain. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that was everything.